Ladies and gentlemen, today I'll be talking about important topic in wound care. I was just walking here by the beach, and I saw this lady. She had a wound in her right forearm, and it was wrapped with a Coban. And I asked what happened, and I introduced myself. I told her that I work in wound care, that I'm a wound care specialist, and she was very comfortable telling me her story. And she said that she sustained a fall leading to a partial, it appears to be a partial thickness wound. Uh, we call it skin tear, and she said that it has been more than 7 weeks that the wound is there. And her question was, why is it that my wound keeps forming what she said, the yellow tissue on the base of the wound? And she said it's becoming thicker and thicker, and she was told to just apply Medihoney on it and cover with a non-adherent dressing. And so I said, I asked if she has been wrapping her wound every day, and she said yes, because that was the instructions. And in other words, that they put the dressing and then they wrap the dressing with Coban every day. So the question is, why is it that improper dressing, especially when you're wrapping a wound when you are not supposed to, will lead into slough formation, thus delayed healing? Okay, first of all, let me tell you, if this is a skin tear, usually it is a partial thickness wound. Usually it heals really fast. However, there are other factors, like, say, for example, in the case of that lady, she's older. So when you're older, everything is slow. Okay. However, I want to point out that if this is a partial thickness wound, you do not see slough on the base of the wound. Usually, the wound will not form a slough because partial thickness wound resurfaced robustly via rapid re-epithelialization, meaning to say that the edges of the wound will form the epithelial cells and they migrate inwards. Not only that, in a partial thickness wound, some of the dermal appendages are still intact. Say, for example, your sebaceous gland, your hair follicles, and whatnot. They have keratinocytes in them. So sometimes they grow from the base of the wound and they come to the surface and grow to rapidly resurface the wound. So there are two sources of epithelial cells or epithelial tissue in a partial thickness wound: from the edges of the wound or from anywhere at the base of the wound from those dermal appendages. So it's robust. Okay, however, like what I said, if this is an older lady or people with diabetes and other comorbidities, sometimes this process does not happen really fast. Now, the presence of slough, what does that mean? Meaning to say that the wound got deeper. It's now a full thickness wound. And one of the reasons why that would happen is when you're wrapping that arm, when there is no swelling. Okay, what happens is that the idea in wound care is you have to establish or allow a lot of blood flow going to the wound in order for this normal processes to proceed. Without circulation, what's gonna happen is more cell death or cell necrosis, thus is slough formation. And one of the ways to do that is when you wrap that arm, you're actually squeezing the circulation away from the wound instead of enhancing blood flow. That's the reason why slough formation happens when you're wrapping a wound when there's no indication. I hope you learned something today. Have a great day. Sunset, sunset. So let's continue our discussion. So one of the interesting, or one of the things that caught my attention is when she said that she was told to use a non-stick or non-adherent dressing, like a talfa dressing over the wound base. So my question is, or the question is that the appropriate dressing to use in this situation? My answer is no, adherent dressing sometimes are used in some situations because they help in facilitating debridement, because the necrotic tissue or the slough will stick or adhere to the dressing, so that during dressing removal it helps in cleaning up the wound base. So the other question is, it would be very painful during dressing removal. So there's a lot of ways in order for you to minimize pain during removal when you are using an adherent or yes, adherent dressing over a wound base. So one of them is, why don't you saturate that with saline solution, or you can use something like solution with surfactant, like your skin integrity. Okay, I have a very good success every time I use that on every time I remove I stick it dressing over, yeah, out from the, or off from the wound base. So there are, like what I said, I want to repeat like what I just said, there are times that you're gonna use non-adherent dressing, but there are also times that adherent dressing will be beneficial. So when to use a non-adherent dressing? So as soon as you start cleaning up the wound base and you see the growth of granulation tissue, meaning to say that the wound now is on the next phase of healing, which is what we call the proliferative phase of healing. That's when you are actively growing tissues in order to fill the gap in the wound. That is the time when you should not use any form of adherent dressing. The doctrine of do no harm applies in this situation, because if you continue doing adherent dressing when the wound started to go into the proliferative phase of healing, where you start growing granulation tissue, what's gonna happen there is that sticky pad could harm the growing tissue. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below. Have a great day. Oh, by the way, if you see this trail, I just walked the trail. If you are diabetic, okay, and you have a wound, so it's highly advisable that to not walk that type of trail without using the right shoe. Okay, so right shoe meaning to say that it should be bigger than normal. There's always give an allowance, because I can tell you right now, if you have a wound and you are rubbing that wound against your shoe, next time you go and see your wound care specialist, your wound will be worse. Anyway, especially if you have what we call neuropathy, there's a lot of problems in neuropathy. Sometimes you lost what we call the protective sensation. That is the sensation, that's your ability or ability of your skin down there to tell you that something is rubbing, okay, something is tight. If you don't have that protective sensation, you can easily create a wound that you never know that it exists in your feet, especially at the bottom of your feet. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. Like what I said, I keep repeating myself. Have a great day. By the way, am I trying to promote wet to dry dressing in here? But absolutely no. Do not use gauze, okay? Do not put a gauze and leave it there over the moon base. But there's still a lot of dressing materials that you can use except gauze. All right, so no wet to dry dressing.